Story 1. In a tech support role, one manager used to boast that his team's average call times were the lowest in the company. While average call times were in the 12 to 17-minute range, his team was constantly under 10 minutes. His team was awarded multiple times, and his strategy was adopted company-wide to all customer service and technical support teams, including our internal information technology teams. That strategy was under a strict non-disclosure agreement, as we did not want to allow competitors to emulate it. When our call center would bid on contracts, it became an impressive metric. Our customer satisfaction scores are on par, but we have call times 20 to 30% lower than our competitors. The secret of the non-disclosure agreement that I was not allowed to disclose? Their big method. Just hang up on people. Straight up. Find a way to say, okay, go ahead and do that and call back if it doesn't fix it. Then hang up. Don't wait for confirmation. Okay, so reboot your personal computer, and your problem should be solved. Thanks for calling. Click. Eventually, they came out with more useful metrics that track things like first call resolution, which absolutely shredded this company, and they went out of business a year or two later. Story 2. I worked for a website creation company back in 1999, managing the website for a big brand and large bank that was sponsoring a round-trip paid ticket to the Super Bowl. I worked on the website that collected all the entries, and I posted the rules that the company's legal department wrote to describe the rules of the contest. A random winner was to be selected for the prize, and I wrote a software tool to randomly pick the winner to be used when the contest was over. When the contest ended, I was told to forget my tool, forget the rules, just look in the database and find someone in South Florida, where the Super Bowl was in 1999, so the company wouldn't have to pay for airfare. Story 3. I was never under a non-disclosure agreement, but the hotel is under new ownership, so I guess I can say it now. The hotel had no internet connection starting around 1 a.m. to 6 a.m., like clockwork, every night. I don't know if it was just a system fault or if it was cost-cutting. But without internet, the security cameras didn't work or record anything. The fire alarm system doesn't work either. The alarms go off, but it doesn't call for help. So if we had a fire that started at 3 a.m., for example, then unless someone else who's driving by calls it in, I have no idea what's happening. One night, we had an assault happen in the parking lot. The police needed camera evidence, and our cameras didn't record anything because the internet was out. So that was fun explaining to the detectives. Story 4. At my old job, Pam helped me reallocate my clients' ad scheduling so I could invoice a little extra for the last month of December 2014, helping me hit my yearly budget. I was let go 2 weeks after that, and I believe the original plan was to fire me under the justification of missing my yearly budget. Instead, I received a severance of $15,000. I believe Pam knew or heard what the situation was and helped me out. Appreciate you, Pam. Story 5. The private school I worked for was for students identified with giftedness. The owner of the school administered the giftedness test. Can you pay the tuition? You're gifted. Can your sibling pay? Them too. Your cousin? Neighbor? Kid you know across town? You're all gifted. Story 6. In Prince George's County, Maryland, county transit bus drivers are instructed that following an accident, they are not to speak to anyone until a supervisor arrives on the scene. An approved method for not talking, especially to other drivers involved, is to feign injury. There is actually money allotted to pay the fines related to wasting 911 and emergency resources because analysts determined it was cheaper than costs associated with drivers accidentally admitting fault. There is also an entire audit and analysis team related to accidents because of the sheer volume of people who falsely claim to be on a bus during an accident. To clarify, the current Prince George County the bus transit system is run by a company called Régie Autonome de Transports Parisiens. They were hired during the COVID-19 pandemic, which was after I left the state. The company running the buses until 2020 was called Veolia. Story 7. Hasbro has tried to make the following 2 films: Stretch Armstrong, a gritty reimagining starring Taylor Lautner, The Wolf from Twilight, with a Nolan's Batman feel, Candyland, a Lord of the Rings-style epic for children starring Adam Sandler. Both got pitch packets made before ultimately being shelved. Last I heard, the Candyland idea is still kind of alive. Story 8. I once got hurt at work, a concussion specifically, on camera. I have a history with concussion-like symptoms. I was 99% sure I hit my head, but I lost all memory of the accident. I ended up missing a few weeks of work due to the severity. I was not 100% sure if I had some sort of mental breakdown, so I asked to see the video so that I could confirm my injury. They flat out refused to let me see the video and told me there was no evidence that I hit my head. I offered to sign away any rights to sue, and I was not even asking them for hospital bills or paid time off. Long story short, I sued them, I won, and had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. I got my wages and hospital bills paid that I was not even asking for, and was finally able to get the video. It was a 100% no doubt head injury, complete with a loud bonking sound effect and me falling down and leaving a dent in the bulkhead that I hit. After the fact, the office staff told me that they were under orders from upper management to lie and say they did not see anything on the tape. They said this was standard for anyone who gets hurt, to just lie about it and let it play out in court. I obviously quit soon after. Story 9. About 20 years ago, I signed a non-disclosure agreement with a very large record company regarding their attempts to get into selling their catalog online, streaming, sales, etc. It was a minefield because they were still wary of upsetting high street retailers, and that's where the charts came from. These attempts were frustrated by their top-level corporate executives. One week, they all went to a What is an MP3 conference in Buenos Aires to get them up to speed. The issue was they spent so much time partying that the only talk which seemed to stick was the scare tactics about how teenagers could scrape MP3s from the web, and they could be copied and redistributed easily. When they came back, every item in the catalog was ordered to be scrubbed from the web. No 30-second previews, nothing should be audible. Not a hint of audio. Lock it all down. Put all the tapes in a chest and seal it with concrete at the bottom of the sea. That's going to make everyone go back to compact discs. Good old profitable compact discs. Story 10. Walmart corporate office puts a screensaver on all their workers' computers with a message urging them to donate to an emergency fund for their full-time or near full-time warehouse and retail workers instead of giving them health care or paid time off. Walmart retail and warehouse workers are kept just below full-time so they can't get benefits, and the vast majority receive government benefits. Your taxes are subsidizing millions in benefits for the richest company in America, so the richest chief executive officer in America is richer. Everything in the second paragraph of this post is public knowledge. Story 11. In the early 2000s, I worked in the clothing department at Walmart, and one night I was handed a memo to secretly cut out all the tags on a list of products that said Made in Myanmar because the brand was suddenly trying to hide that they were doing business there. I believe it was Hanes. Story 12. Worked in technical customer support for an information technology and hardware company. We were sold a bad batch of chips from a supplier. The chips caused random watchdog resets, which would cause random crashes or reboots. The company got a settlement to remediate it, but the Master of Business Administration and legal types deemed it too expensive to fix what was already in the field, so they fixed it in support. We had very strict talking points when our customers would report this issue. Everyone in the support team knew what the issue was and had each worked several cases of it, but our script made us act like it was a unique case that had never happened before. It is kind of hard to do that when you have replaced multiple units for the same customer in several weeks, but if you diverted from the talking points, you got counseled by management. This issue caused several high-level outages or issues at many of our customers. We knew why, and we were told to act dumb and bury it in processes and procedures, so we didn't take the hit on needing to replace the known faulty hardware. Story 13. Manipulation of data to give false impressions of reliability was something I saw quite blatantly utilized with little repercussions. My company was struggling to meet on-time delivery schedules and for numerous years was as embarrassingly low as 40%. A new manager came in, and within months we were now boasting an on-time delivery rate of a brilliant 95%. It turns out all he did was change what constituted an on-time delivery. Each time we knew a product would be late, we would notify the customer of the delay and ask them to confirm they still wanted the order. If they still wanted the product, the on-time delivery would be recorded against the new expected date as opposed to the original promised date. Company literature was being sent out boasting of our 95% on-time delivery, now amongst the highest in the industry. when in fact we were by that point meeting less than 30% of initial delivery schedule targets. It was so simple that I am sure numerous companies are getting away with such underhanded tricks. Story 14, Intel Corporation used to go around to colleges and hold programming contests, and to the winner they would give a mid-grade laptop and a gaudy trophy. Back at corporate, some of these winning code bases would get tens of millions of dollars poured into them in attempts to get them to product release. Story 15. I briefly worked at a university in South Florida in the late 1990s and early 2000s. I was chosen to be on an academic integrity team, essentially reviewing claims of plagiarism and cheating and deciding whether they were valid. We were required to sign non-disclosure agreements when we accepted the invitation to be part of the team. There were 3 instances where an employee taking classes there clearly cheated, and the issue was brought to our attention. Each time, the cheating was blatant. All 3 times, we were told to let it go, as it would look bad for the university if it got out. I'm not sure if this is common for other universities, but at the time, I was under the impression that it was common practice everywhere. It was ultimately one of the main reasons I ended up quitting. I was, and still am, disgusted by it. Edit. I did not expect this to gain so much attention. I just wanted to say that I am both loving and cringing at your stories. The dishonesty is astonishing. Story 16. Fortune 500 real estate. Long time ago, we know about the black mold problem. We always knew. We do not disclose it. We intentionally do not look into it. We don't want to know exactly what kind it is because if it's dangerous, then we legally have to spend money to fix it. The only department that is allowed to talk about the black mold problem is press and public relations because only they know how to bury it correctly. That was not a great work culture. Story 17. I worked for a company that made DJ equipment such as turntables. They put a metal plate in their cheaply made turntables so they were the same weight as Technics, when in reality they were plastic garbage. Story 18. I have seen an early cut of John Wick 2 where all of the animal handlers were running around on screen in green spandex bodysuits, running alongside the horses, carrying leads for the dogs, and so on. Just all of these people who are invisible to the actors and the rest of their world. Absolutely surreal. Story 19. I was never bound to a non-disclosure agreement somehow, but I sat in to oversee the technical aspects of Herbalife meetings. We are talking about meetings with the highest level sellers and their board. They spoke about how to manipulate low-income and unintelligent people to make them millions of dollars. How to teach others to scam others to make them more money. Story 20. The lady who owns Columbia Sportswear neglects her animals to the point of death, and then she just buys more. I was supposed to be a caretaker for them, but there weren't even basic medical supplies like phenylbutazone and SWAT or veterinary wrap. She wouldn't call the veterinarian for almost anything. 2 goats died of malnutrition. Another's entire hoof fell off. 12 chickens died. 2 miniature donkeys died. The guinea pig was kept alone in a hamster cage, and she kept her late husband's dog Monty locked in a dog run. Her dogs were permitted out, but not Monty, even on a leash. Initially, he was allowed out, and I got him in great shape taking walks every day. But one day, she stopped allowing even that. I quit when she started talking about getting 30 or more sheep and pigs. It was a miserable place, her mansion. I only worked there a year and brought in my own supplies to treat what I could. But it will always break my heart I couldn't do more. I called animal control multiple times, and they never helped, even with the goats who looked like walking skeletons. Rich people can do whatever they want to living things. Story 21. I worked at a startup that tracked employee happiness, supposedly so they could make employees happier, but in practice it seemed they were preemptively getting rid of unhappy employees. No need to wait for them to quit. Story 22. I worked for a company that oversees and enforces self-regulation for one of the power grids in the United States. My job was to help secure it against cyber attacks and to help write the regulations that enforce those protections. I had panic attacks on Sunday nights because I knew at work the next morning we would go over the list of everything not compliant, and the lawyers would argue they were, and nothing would get done. Many times the lawyers would tell me that I wasn't interpreting what was written correctly. Then I'd remind them that I wrote it with a committee, and if they didn't believe me, they could look at the minutes taken in the meetings. Instead, they would just document their justifications for being compliant and not actually secure anything. The United States power system is now so vulnerable to cyber attacks that it is only a matter of time before millions of people have their lives thrown into complete disaster and potentially hundreds of thousands that will die. I just can't even think about how bad things are now.